A poor girl paid the bus fare for a millionaire with her last money. What he did next surprised everyone. Before we begin the story, leave a comment. Tell us where you are watching from. Enjoy the story. Michael Jameson was driving that morning when he took a turn onto a quiet street, unaware that his day was about to take a drastic turn. The street was eerily calm, the only movement the flicker of sunlight reflecting off the parked cars. It wasn't until he saw the group of boys ahead that he realized something was off. Before he could even react, one of the boys ran up and threw a rock at his windshield. "Hey, what's going on?" Michael shouted, stepping out of his car, his heart pounding in his chest. Without warning, the boys surrounded him, their faces twisted with anger and frustration. One of them grabbed Michael's keys. Another snatched his phone. "Give us everything," the leader said in a cold tone. "Please, I don't have much," Michael pleaded. But it was too late. They shoved him aside and drove off in his car, leaving him stranded on the side of the road. Shocked and shaken, Michael started walking toward the nearest bus station. His mind raced with the realization that his car, his phone, his everything had just been stolen in broad daylight. He needed to figure out how to get home, but there was one problem. He had no money, no way to pay for the bus fare. As Michael walked, the weight of his situation settled in. He hadn't been expecting this kind of day, and the reality of being robbed hit harder than any blow. He glanced around, hoping to find a solution, but the street was empty. His phone was gone, so there was no way to call for help. By the time he arrived at the bus station, he was frustrated, tired, and feeling completely helpless. Across the bus station stood a young woman, Sophia Madison, a woman in her mid-20s, her mind far from the troubles that had just befallen Michael. She was busy texting someone on her phone, her thoughts focused on an important meeting she had later that day. She didn't notice Michael walk up, his disheveled appearance a stark contrast to her calm demeanor. Sophia was used to her daily routine, taking the bus to work, meeting her deadlines, and dealing with the usual challenges of life. But today, something felt different. She didn't know it yet, but the encounter that was about to happen would change both her life and Michael's in ways they couldn't have imagined. Michael stood at the bus station, unsure of what to do. His wallet was gone, and he felt awkward asking anyone for money. He just needed to get home, but it seemed impossible. He gazed at the bus timetable, trying to figure out when the next bus would come. Sophia noticed him standing there, looking lost and dejected. She glanced at him for a moment, but didn't think much of it. She had seen all kinds of people at this bus stop, some in need, some just passing through, but she had learned to keep to herself. But today was different. She was the one who took action. As the bus approached, Michael hesitated, wondering how he could board without fare. He didn't want to make a scene, but he had no choice. Just as he stepped forward, he heard Sophia's voice behind him. "Excuse me," she said, approaching him with a warm smile. "Are you all right?" Michael turned around, startled by her voice. He hadn't expected anyone to speak to him, let alone offer help. His heart softened, though he was too embarrassed to explain everything. I don't have any money for the bus," Michael stammered, his eyes downcast. "I don't know how to get home." Sophia paused, thinking for a moment. Without hesitation, she pulled out her wallet, extracted the money for the fare, and handed it to him. "Here, take this. It's not much, but it should get you where you need to go," she said, her voice kind and gentle. Michael blinked in surprise. "Wait, you're giving me this?" Sophia nodded. "It's no problem. Everyone needs help sometimes." Michael felt a sense of gratitude flood over him. In a world where kindness sometimes seemed rare, this simple act of generosity touched him deeply. The bus arrived, and the two of them climbed aboard, finding 2 empty seats. As the bus pulled away from the station, Michael couldn't help but wonder about the woman who had just helped him. Who was she? Why had she helped a complete stranger? Sophia, on the other hand, didn't expect any special recognition. It was just another act of kindness to her. But Michael had no idea that the person sitting next to him, someone so unassuming, would play a pivotal role in his life in the days to come. The journey was quiet at first. Michael stared out of the window, lost in his thoughts. He kept replaying the scene in his mind, how quickly the boys had taken everything from him, how vulnerable he had felt in that moment. "Thank you, by the way," Michael said, breaking the silence, "for helping me out." Sophia smiled warmly. "It's nothing. I'm just glad I could help." A few minutes passed, but Michael couldn't stop thinking about how he could repay her for her kindness. He didn't have much to offer, but there was something about Sophia that made him want to do something for her, to show his appreciation. Just as he was about to say something else, the bus came to a sudden stop. Michael's head jerked forward, and before he knew it, the driver had jumped out of his seat, shouting something about a mechanical failure. Sophia rolled her eyes in frustration. "I swear, this always happens." "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," Michael said, trying to lighten the mood. Sophia let out a sigh but smiled. "It's okay. At least it's not raining." As the minutes passed, the bus passengers began to grumble, but Michael noticed something that struck him. Sophia didn't complain. Instead, she just leaned back in her seat, scrolling through her phone and continuing her messages. There was something calm about her, something he hadn't seen in a long time. As the bus sat idle on the side of the road, passengers began to complain about the delay. Michael could sense the rising frustration, but he remained calm. He glanced at Sophia, who still seemed unfazed by the inconvenience. She looked up from her phone and met his gaze. "You're not bothered by this at all, are you?" Michael asked, half smiling at her calm demeanor. Sophia chuckled. "What's the point of stressing over something I can't control? It'll get fixed eventually." Michael was taken aback. It was rare to meet someone with such a laid-back attitude. Most people would have been ranting by now, but not her. Her coolness seemed almost contagious, and for the first time that morning, Michael felt his own frustration begin to dissipate. "It's true," he muttered. "I guess I've been letting this whole situation get to me." Sophia smiled. "It happens to the best of us." They sat in silence for a few more minutes. Michael was deep in thought, considering his options. He had always prided himself on being independent, but today had knocked him off his feet. He had no idea how he was going to recover from losing his car and phone. As he sat there, a thought struck him. Maybe he was in the middle of a personal breakdown, but perhaps this was also an opportunity for change. Maybe he needed a fresh start. "What do you do?" he asked, turning toward Sophia. "For work, I mean?" Sophia's eyes sparkled with a subtle gleam of pride. "I'm a freelance writer. I work from home, so I don't really have a typical office job. I love it, though. It gives me the freedom to work at my own pace." Michael was intrigued. "That sounds pretty amazing. Do you write anything specific?" "I write content for websites, blogs, and even social media," she explained. "It's a lot of research and creativity, but it gives me a sense of independence, which I value." Michael nodded, admiring her. Freelance work sounded like the perfect escape from the daily grind. "That's awesome. I've always thought about doing something like that, but I never had the guts to try." Sophia smiled warmly. "You don't know unless you try." At that moment, the bus jolted forward, and the driver returned to his seat. He announced that the issue had been fixed and the ride would continue. Sophia and Michael exchanged glances before the bus slowly pulled back into motion. The brief conversation had been an unexpected distraction, but it gave Michael something to think about. It had been a while since he had considered his own career path. He had been working at a corporate job for the past few years, but the thrill he once had for it had long worn off. This morning's incident with the robbery had made him question everything. Maybe he wasn't living the life he truly wanted. Maybe it was time to make a change. and the idea of being his own boss, like Sophia, seemed increasingly appealing. As the bus drove on, Michael couldn't help but glance at Sophia every now and then. Her calm and effortless demeanor reminded him of a life he had forgotten, one that wasn't bogged down by stress and material pursuits. When they reached their stop, Michael followed Sophia off the bus. They were both heading in the same direction, so they walked side by side, chatting casually about their lives and the oddities of city living. Sophia had no idea who Michael was, or why he seemed so distant and preoccupied. She thought of him as just another stranger she had met, but little did she know, this encounter would have a lasting impact on both of their lives. When they reached the corner of the street, Michael stopped. "Hey, I know I don't have much to offer right now," he said, his voice hesitant. "But if you ever need anything, let me know. Maybe I could help you with something in the future." Sophia raised an eyebrow, amused. "What, you mean like a favor for a favor? I thought you were the one in need of help." Michael smiled sheepishly. "I know, but that's just the kind of person I am. I believe in paying things forward." Sophia laughed softly. "I respect that. I'll keep that in mind." As they exchanged goodbyes, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within him. This wasn't just a random encounter. He felt like the universe had sent Sophia into his life for a reason. Her words about doing things at your own pace, finding freedom in your work, was a wake-up call for him. Later that evening, as Michael sat alone in his small apartment, he thought back to his conversation with Sophia. Something about her confidence, her unshakable calm, stayed with him. He felt inspired in a way he hadn't in years. And that inspiration would lead him to make the decision that would alter the course of his life. The next morning, Michael woke up to the sound of his phone's alarm. It was a strange feeling waking up without the usual hum of notifications or messages. His phone had been taken, and with it, his connection to the world. But as he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the stark emptiness of his room, he realized that, in a strange way, he felt free. The weight of his past, the demands of his corporate job, the endless cycle of consumerism, suddenly it all seemed insignificant. His mind drifted back to the conversation with Sophia. She had mentioned being a freelance writer, working from home, and making her own schedule. That idea had appealed to him more than anything else in recent years. Maybe it was time to start living for himself instead of chasing after things that didn't matter. Without a clear plan in mind, he made a decision. He wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for himself. He was going to take action. After a quick breakfast, Michael went to his laptop and began researching freelance writing. He knew that starting fresh wouldn't be easy, but he was determined. He signed up for freelance platforms, began reading articles about writing, and even signed up for a course on creative writing. He wasn't sure where it would lead, but he knew that he wanted more than what his corporate life had offered. Meanwhile, Sophia had just finished a morning run when she noticed an email notification pop up on her phone. It was from a client she had been working with for the past few months, asking her to meet at a new cafe to discuss an upcoming project. She felt the familiar excitement bubble up inside her. This was her world, the world of deadlines and creative brainstorming. She enjoyed it, but she also knew that something was missing. There was a part of her that had been craving a deeper connection, something more meaningful. Sophia had spent most of her life focused on her career, pouring all her energy into building her freelance empire. But lately, she had begun to wonder if there was more to life than just writing articles and creating content. The encounter with Michael at the bus stop had lingered in her thoughts, and she couldn't help but wonder if her path would ever cross with his again. As she arrived at the cafe for her meeting, she sat down at the table with her client, but her thoughts kept drifting. She had a feeling that something was about to change, just didn't know how or when. 2 weeks later, Michael and Sophia crossed paths again. This time, it wasn't at the bus stop. It wasn't a chance encounter either. Michael had taken the plunge into freelancing and was already starting to get small gigs. He was no longer the man he once was, the one who had been robbed, stranded, and overwhelmed. He had found purpose in the work, and it had given him a sense of control over his own life again. That's when he saw her again, Sophia. He spotted her across the street while walking toward a cafe he frequented to meet his clients. She looked just as beautiful as the last time he'd seen her, but there was something different about her now. She was smiling, her eyes bright with enthusiasm, and it struck him that she seemed more at ease, more connected to the world around her. Without thinking, Michael walked over to her. "Sophia?" he called out, his voice unsure. Sophia turned around, surprised to see him. "Michael, what are you doing here?" He smiled, a little sheepish. "I've been working in the area, actually, freelancing now. I guess I'm on my way to meet a client." "That's amazing," Sophia responded, her eyes lighting up. "I'm doing the same. I actually just finished a meeting myself." There was an awkward silence for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that people shared when they both understood that there was something unspoken between them, something beyond just the small talk. "I didn't expect to see you again," Michael said, breaking the silence, "but I'm glad I did." Sophia smiled, a warmth spreading across her face. "Same here. I was actually thinking about you the other day. I've been meaning to ask how's the freelance life treating you." "It's been good," Michael replied, his voice more confident now. "I'm still getting the hang of it, but it feels better than my old job. I'm not just working for someone else anymore." Sophia's eyes softened. "That's exactly how I feel. It's so much more fulfilling, but I'm glad to see that you're making it work." There was a brief pause, and then Michael took a deep breath, deciding it was time to reveal something. "You know," he began, "I never actually told you this, but I'm not exactly, well, just a guy. I know I didn't look like much when we met, but I'm actually the CEO of a tech company. I've been in the industry for a long time." Sophia's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't interrupt. "I was robbed a couple of weeks ago," Michael continued. "But even though that situation was terrible, it forced me to look at my life differently. I realized I had been living the wrong way for so long, chasing things I didn't really care about." Sophia couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man who had seemed so down and out just a few weeks ago was not only successful, but was also someone who could have easily helped himself out of any situation. Yet, he had chosen to live a simpler, more humble life. "And that's when I decided to leave the corporate world," Michael said, his eyes meeting hers. "I've been doing freelance work just like you. I guess you could say I'm trying to live more authentically now." Sophia was silent for a moment, trying to process everything he had said. It was a lot to take in, and yet it made perfect sense. Michael wasn't just a stranger she had helped on the bush, was a man who had made an incredible choice to live life on his own terms. "Well, I'm glad to see you're doing better," she said softly, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "It's inspiring." Michael returned the smile. "You were right, you know. You helped me realize that I didn't have to keep living the way I was. I just needed to take the first step." As they continued talking, they realized just how much they had in common. Both of them were looking for freedom, for a life that wasn't defined by material wealth or societal expectations. And as the conversation deepened, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of connection that he hadn't felt in a long time. Little did he know that this was only the beginning of their unexpected journey together, one that would surprise them both in ways they couldn't have predicted. As the days passed, Michael and Sophia's connection grew stronger. What had begun as a simple chance encounter at the bus stop had blossomed into something more, a friendship that at times felt like it was destined to be something deeper. Michael found himself thinking about Sophia often. Her easygoing nature had been a breath of fresh air compared to the stressful, high-powered world he had left behind. Every time he spoke with her, he felt more grounded, more centered. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone who had changed his outlook on life. Her words, her attitude, everything about her resonated with him on a level he had never experienced before. And Sophia, too, found herself drawn to Michael in ways she hadn't expected. At first, she had seen him as just another man in a sea of faces, someone who had been down on his luck and needed help. But as she spent more time with him, she realized there was more to him than met the eye. There was something profound about Michael, something different from the other people she knew. One evening, they decided to grab dinner together. It was a casual get-together, nothing fancy, but it felt significant in the context of their friendship. They chose a small Italian restaurant on the corner of the street, where the atmosphere was warm and intimate. It was the kind of place where you could relax and talk for hours without feeling rushed. As they sat across from each other, sipping wine and enjoying their meals, the conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about their work, their dreams, and their frustrations. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt like he could be himself, without any pretenses. "So, what made you choose to become a freelancer?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. "I mean, I always thought about doing it, but I never had the courage. I was so caught up in my corporate life." Sophia smiled, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I guess I just got tired of the 9-to-5 grind. I wanted more freedom, more control over my life. But it wasn't easy. It took a lot of sacrifice and hard work." Michael nodded. "I can imagine. It sounds like you've built something really great for yourself." She shrugged modestly. "I've worked hard, but I'm still figuring things out. It's not always as glamorous as people think." The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they shared stories about their childhood, their families, and their travels. Mike found himself laughing more than he had in years. It wasn't just the food that was making him feel content. It was the presence of someone who genuinely cared and who didn't judge him for his past mistakes. As the evening wore on, Michael decided it was time to take the next step. He had been holding on to a secret, one that he knew he couldn't keep for much longer. It wasn't that he didn't trust Sophia. It was simply that revealing the truth about his wealth felt complicated. After all, he didn't want her to think that he was just another rich guy trying to impress her. He wanted her to see him for who he truly was, someone who had gone through a lot, someone who had struggled just like anyone else. But tonight felt different. It felt like the right moment. "Sophia," he began, his voice slightly more serious than before, "there's something I haven't told you. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think you deserve to know the truth." Sophia looked at him, intrigued but unaware of what was coming. "What is it?" Michael hesitated, then decided to just go for it. "I know I've told you that I'm a freelancer now, and that's true. But I also want to tell you that I used to be the CEO of a major tech company. I've made a lot of money, but I've walked away from all of it." Sophia's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Wait, what? You were the CEO of a tech company?" Michael nodded. "Yes, and I sold the company a while back. I realized that I was living a life I didn't want. All the money, all the success, it wasn't making me happy. It was actually making me feel empty." Sophia was silent for a moment, processing his words. She hadn't expected this. The man she had gotten to know seemed so down to earth, so different from the corporate tycoons she had read about. Yet, here he was, confessing that he had walked away from everything most people would dream of. "Michael," she said slowly, her voice filled with curiosity, "I had no idea. Why didn't you tell me this before?" He looked down at his plate, his fingers tapping nervously against the edge of his wineglass. "I didn't want to scare you off. I didn't want you to think I was just another rich guy trying to impress you. I wanted you to see me for who I really am, not the money, not the title." Sophia's expression softened. "Michael, I don't care about your money. I care about who you are as a person. I care about what you've been through and how you've changed." Michael's heart skipped a beat. He had expected her to react differently, maybe with disbelief or even judgment. But she wasn't. She was understanding, and that meant everything to him. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging between them. Michael couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of something more. Could this be the connection he had been searching for? Sophia broke the silence with a smile. "You know, for a CEO, you're surprisingly humble." Michael chuckled, feeling lighter than he had in days. "I guess I've learned a few things." Sophia raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Michael echoed, linking his glass with hers. And just like that, the tension that had been building between them disappeared. They were two people who had found each other in an unexpected way, and the connection between them felt genuine, pure. Michael had been afraid that revealing his past would push her away, but it had only brought them closer. As the night ended, they parted ways with a promise to see each other again soon. But what neither of them knew was that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Sophia's life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined, and Michael's past, full of wealth and success, was going to come back to haunt him in ways he never expected. Days passed, and Michael and Sophia continued to meet, their connection deepening with each conversation. They spent more time together, enjoying simple things like coffee dates, long walks in the park, and dinners at small, cozy restaurants. Sophia was intrigued by Michael's transformation. She had seen him as just another man caught in the whirlwind of life, but now she saw him as someone who had the courage to step away from it all and seek something deeper. But as their friendship grew, so did the unease in Michael's chest. His decision to leave the corporate world hadn't been without consequences. The company he had built, the one he had sold, was still very much a part of him, and the wealth he had accumulated had its own set of responsibilities that had a way of creeping back into his life. One morning, as Michael sat in his apartment, sipping his coffee, he received an email that made his heart skip a beat. It was from an old business associate, someone he hadn't spoken to in months. The subject line read, "We need to talk." His hands shook as he opened the message. It was a brief, urgent note that read, "Michael, I need to speak with you about the company. It's important. Please get in touch as soon as possible. We have a situation that requires your attention." Michael's heart pounded in his chest. He hadn't thought about the company since he'd left it behind, and he certainly hadn't expected to hear from anyone connected to it. He stared at the screen for a long time, wondering what this could mean. Was something going wrong? Was his decision to step away coming back to bite him? He hesitated for a moment before deciding to call his associate, John, and find out what was going on. Later that day, John's voice came through the phone, sounding just as anxious as Michael felt. "Michael, it's good to hear from you. Listen, I'm going to cut to the chase. The company is facing a crisis. There's a lawsuit, and it's not looking good. The board has been trying to manage it, but we need your help. You're still listed as the owner, and there's a lot of pressure to resolve things quickly." Michael's mind raced. He had sold the company. He had given up his role. He was free, or so he thought. "What do you mean I'm still listed as the owner?" "I sold the company," Michael said. his voice shaky. John sighed. I know you did, but the deal was messy. There were some legal loopholes we didn't address, and now we're dealing with the consequences. You're still legally tied to the company in some ways, Michael. Michael felt the ground beneath him shift. He had thought he was free. He had thought that walking away from the company would let him live his life on his own terms. But now, it seemed like his past was about to catch up with him in the worst way possible. I can't go back to that life, John, Michael said, his voice filled with frustration. I left for a reason. I understand, John replied softly, but if you don't step in, the fallout could be catastrophic, not just for the company, but for your reputation too. The weight of the situation settled heavily on Michael's shoulders. The man who had once been the CEO, the one who had made millions, was now forced to confront the very thing he had run away from. The next day, Michael met with Sophia at their usual cafe, but today there was a heaviness to him that she couldn't ignore. She noticed it as soon as he walked in. His shoulders were tense, and his eyes were clouded with something she couldn't quite place. Hey, are you all right? Sophia asked, concern evident in her voice. Michael sat down across from her, letting out a long breath. I don't know. I just got off the phone with an old business associate. It's about the company I sold. Sophia raised an eyebrow. I thought you walked away from that life. I did, Michael replied, his voice tinged with frustration. But I guess I'm still tied to it in some way. There's a lawsuit, and now they want me to step in and fix things. I didn't realize how messy the whole thing was until now. Sophia's expression softened. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Michael. You've already made the decision to leave that life behind. You don't owe anyone anything. Michael shook his head, a mix of guilt and confusion swirling inside him. It's not that simple. This isn't just about me anymore. The company is in danger. If I don't act, the fallout could destroy everything. Sophia leaned in, her eyes locked on his. But you don't have to carry that burden alone. You've already done what most people would never have the courage to do, step away from a life that wasn't serving you. Don't let them pull you back in now. Her words resonated deeply with Michael. It was the same advice she had given him the first time they met, the same wisdom that had helped him find clarity in his own life. But this situation was different. The stakes were higher. I just feel like I'm trapped, Michael admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can keep running from my past. Sophia squeezed his hand. You're not running from it. You're choosing a new path. Don't let them drag you back into the life you've already left behind. Michael looked at her, a sense of clarity starting to form in his mind. She was right. He didn't have to go back to that world. He had built a new life for himself, and he was strong enough to protect it. He took a deep breath. You're right. I don't need to go back. I've made my choice. Sophia smiled softly, her eyes filled with pride. Whatever you decide, I'll be here for you. A few days later, Michael made the decision to face the company's crisis head-on, but he would do it on his own terms. He arranged a meeting with the board and the legal team, but this time, he would set clear boundaries. He wouldn't be the CEO again. He wouldn't let them pull him back into the old life. But he would help guide the company through the storm, using his expertise to ensure it didn't collapse. When he met with the team, they were shocked by his resolve. Michael didn't walk into the room as a millionaire CEO. He walked in as someone who had grown, someone who had learned from his mistakes. He wasn't there to save the company in the way they wanted. He was there to help them find a solution without compromising his newfound peace. Sophia, who had been with him every step of the way, was the quiet strength he leaned on when things felt overwhelming. Together, they faced the challenges ahead, knowing that the road wouldn't always be easy, but it was theirs to navigate. As the weeks passed, Michael's decision proved to be the right one. The company weathered the storm, and he found a new sense of purpose in helping guide it without being consumed by it. He and Sophia grew even closer, their bond solidifying into something neither of them had expected. And as for Michael, he realized that his true wealth wasn't in the millions he had once accumulated, it was in the relationships he had built, the peace he had found, and the future he was creating with the woman who had helped him see that anything was possible. As the months passed, Michael found himself growing more comfortable in his new life. The weight of his past decisions no longer loomed over him like a cloud, and he was beginning to embrace the idea that true success wasn't just measured by money or titles, it was about peace of mind, living authentically, and building meaningful connections. Sophia, too, was experiencing a transformation. She had always been independent, but after spending so much time with Michael, she realized that there was more to life than just work and solitude. She had never allowed herself to truly let her guard down with anyone, but with Michael, it felt different. He saw her for who she truly was, not just the freelance writer or the woman who had built her own career. He appreciated her depth, her passions, and even her flaws. It was something she hadn't realized she was craving until it was right in front of her. One evening, as they sat on Michael's balcony overlooking the city, the air thick with the sound of crickets and the distant hum of traffic, Michael turned to Sophia, his gaze soft. "You know, I never thought I'd find peace," he said quietly, staring at the skyline. "Not like this. I thought I needed all the success, all the money to feel fulfilled, but it was just a distraction. I didn't realize how much I was missing until I found myself here, right here, with you." Sophia looked at him, her heart fluttering at the sincerity in his voice. She had never heard him speak so openly about his past struggles, and it made her realize how much he had grown. This was the Michael she had come to know, the one who was vulnerable, honest, and unafraid to acknowledge his flaws. "I'm glad you're here," she replied softly, her hand brushing against his. "You're not the same person I met at the bus stop, and neither am I." Michael chuckled, his thumb gently rubbing her hand. "No, we're not. I've changed in ways I never thought possible, and it's because of you. You've shown me that it's okay to let go of the past and focus on what truly matters." Sophia smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I think we both taught each other something valuable. We found a kind of peace with ourselves and with each other." Just as the moment felt like it was settling into something perfect, Michael's phone buzzed on the table beside him. His heart sank, recognizing the number. It was John again. "Sorry, I need to take this," Michael said, picking up the phone, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Sophia watched him with concern as he answered, stepping away from her slightly. "Michael, I'm sorry to bother you again, but there's something you need to know." John's voice came through the phone, sounding urgent. "We have a problem. The company, there's a new legal battle, and this time it's not just a lawsuit. They're coming after you personally." Michael's stomach tightened. "What do you mean, coming after me personally? What happened?" John's voice was filled with frustration. "They've found a way to tie your name to some of the company's dealings. You didn't know about it, but the contracts were signed under your name. It's bad, Michael. We need you to come in and help us fight this. If we don't, this could ruin you." Michael's heart raced. The past he had worked so hard to leave behind was clawing its way back into his life, threatening everything he had built. He looked at Sophia, her face filled with worry as she watched him, waiting for him to speak. "Michael?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with concern. He ended the call, his mind reeling. "It's the company again," he said, his voice tight. "They're trying to drag me back into it. There's a new legal issue, and it's bad, Sophia. Really bad." Sophia stood up and walked toward him, placing her hands on his shoulders. You don't have to do this alone, Michael. Whatever happens, I'm here. You don't need to face your past on your own. He looked up at her, the weight of the world on his shoulders. I didn't want this, Sophia. I thought walking away would be enough, but I can't keep running from it. It's like I'm stuck in this cycle I can't break. Sophia knelt down in front of him, lifting his chin so he would meet her gaze. You are not stuck. You've already made the hardest decision of your life by walking away from the corporate world. Don't let them pull you back into it. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Michael felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support and belief in him. In that moment, he realized that he wasn't the same man who had been robbed on the street just a few months ago. He wasn't the man who had let fear dictate his actions. He had changed, and he was ready to face this challenge head-on, with Sophia by his side. The next day, Michael arranged to meet with his old associates, but this time, he wasn't going back as the CEO. He wasn't going to let them control his life anymore. When he walked into the boardroom, he did so with his head held high, confident in the knowledge that he had already made his peace with who he was. I'm here to help, but on my terms, he said firmly, looking each of the board members in the eye. I'm not returning to the company, but I will offer my guidance. We'll fix this, but I won't be your CEO again. You have to accept that. The room was silent as they processed his words. Finally, one of the senior board members nodded. We don't have much of a choice, do we? Michael smiled softly. No, you don't. But we can work through this together. A week later, the legal battle was intense. But with Michael's guidance, the company managed to navigate the storm. Michael used his experience to help them find a way out of the mess without returning to the corporate world he had left behind. The company didn't collapse, but it also didn't take over his life. In the aftermath, Michael realized something profound. The battle wasn't just about the company. It was about reclaiming his life. It was about learning how to balance the weight of his past with the peace he had found in the present. Sophia, as always, was there for him. And through the ups and downs, they both realized that what they had was something rare love, founded on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. And in the end, Michael knew that no matter what came his way, he had already won. He had won his freedom, his peace, and the love of a woman who had helped him see the truth of who he was. Michael and Sophia's bond had only grown stronger. They had faced the legal battle together, and while it wasn't easy, they had emerged victorious. Michael had succeeded in securing a favorable outcome for the company, ensuring that his role remained strictly advisory and his personal life wasn't dragged back into the chaos. The company was in the process of restructuring, and although Michael had helped guide them through the mess, he had stayed true to his decision to never return to the CEO position. In the aftermath, he had found a new sense of fulfillment. He wasn't just helping the company from the sidelines, he was focused on his own life, his own happiness, and that happiness, for the first time, wasn't defined by wealth or power. It was defined by the simple moments, the everyday joys of spending time with Sophia, working on his freelance projects, and discovering a world that had nothing to do with his former identity. Sophia, too, was thriving. Her freelance career was booming, and her creative freedom had opened doors she never expected. But it wasn't just her professional life that had flourished. Her relationship with Michael had deepened in ways she hadn't anticipated. She found herself falling for him, not just because of his transformation or the way he had handled his past, but because he had shown her a side of life she had never considered before, a life with someone who truly understood her, who was with her not for what she could offer, but for who she was. It was a rainy evening when things started to shift. Sophia sat on the couch, a cup of tea in hand, as she looked out the window at the soft drizzle that coated the streets outside. Michael had just left for a meeting with a potential new client, and she found herself reflecting on the journey they had taken together. She smiled, thinking of all the challenges they had overcome, the growth they had experienced, and how much their lives had changed in such a short time. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Michael, hey, I'll be done in about an hour. Would you like to meet for dinner? I know a place we've never been to before." Sophia smiled at the message, happy that he was so thoughtful. They had been making a point of spending quality time together, and this dinner sounded like a perfect way to unwind after a long day. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from John, the same associate who had reached out to Michael months ago. Sophia's heart sank slightly as she remembered how tense things had been during the legal battle. She hadn't expected to hear from him again. "Hello?" she answered, her voice steady but cautious. "Sophia," John's voice came through, sounding unusually serious. "I need to speak with Michael. It's urgent." Sophia hesitated. "Michael's not here right now. He's finishing up a meeting. What's this about?" John's voice dropped in tone, his words measured. "There's something you need to know, something we didn't expect. The company is facing another challenge, and this time it's bigger than before. I need Michael's help, and I think it's something he can't ignore this time." Sophia's stomach tightened. "What kind of challenge?" John sighed. "It's a financial issue, but there's also a legal side to it. The firm that bought the company, there are rumors that they're planning to liquidate some of the assets. If Michael doesn't step in and stop it, the company might not survive." Sophia felt her heart race. The last thing Michael needed was to get dragged back into the corporate mess he had just managed to escape from. "I'll let him know when he gets back," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Please do," John replied. "This is serious, Sophia. I'll be waiting for his call." After hanging up, Sophia sat in silence for a moment, the weight of John's words sinking in. She knew this wasn't something Michael would take lightly. The company was still his legacy, even if he had distanced himself from it. But she also knew how much he had changed, how much he had worked to leave that life behind. She feared this new challenge would pull him right back into the whirlwind he had so carefully avoided. Later that night, Michael arrived back at Sophia's apartment, his expression tense as he walked through the door. "Hey," he said, his voice low. "John called, didn't he?" Sophia nodded, standing up from the couch. "Yeah, he said the company is in trouble again. It sounds serious." Michael ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his voice. "I knew it wasn't over. I thought they had everything under control. But now, this isn't just another lawsuit. If they don't handle this, the company will fall apart, and I'll be blamed for walking away." Sophia could see the conflict in his eyes. She could feel the pressure building, not just from the company but from his own internal battle. "Michael," she said softly, walking toward him, "I know you want to help, but I don't want you to lose yourself in this again. You've come so far. You've built something new." Michael sighed, pacing the room. "I didn't ask for this, Sophia. I didn't want to be pulled back in. But I can't just sit here while everything I worked for falls apart. If I don't step in, it'll all be for nothing." Sophia reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You don't have to do this alone, but you also don't have to go back to the man you used to be. Whatever you decide, I'm here with you." Michael looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I wish I had all the answers, but I don't want to lose you in the process." Sophia smiled gently. "You won't lose me. Just don't lose yourself either." The words she spoke struck a chord deep within him. He realized she was right, didn't have to let this define him again. He could help the company without returning to the life he had so carefully left behind. The next day, Michael called John, telling him that he would meet with the board and the legal team, but that he would not be returning to the CEO position. This time, He would help guide them through the crisis without compromising his peace. When he walked into the meeting, he was a different man than the one who had first sold the company. He was no longer driven by the need for power or recognition. He was there to fix what needed to be fixed, but he was also committed to keeping his boundaries firm. "I'm not here to take back control," Michael said confidently to the board members. "But I will help you find a solution. This isn't about me or my past, it's about securing the future of the company. I'm here as a consultant, nothing more." The board members exchanged glances, but they understood. They had no choice but to accept Michael's terms, and it became clear that his guidance, not his authority, was what the company needed. The company survived the financial crisis, and Michael's role was solidified as an advisor, not a leader. He had helped the company find stability without sacrificing his peace. More importantly, he had stayed true to his commitment to Sophia and to himself. As they sat together on the balcony one evening, watching the sun set over the city, Michael turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I've learned a lot over these past few months," he said quietly. "But the most important thing I've learned is that I don't need to carry the weight of everything on my own, and I don't need to live for anyone but myself. You've helped me see that." Sophia smiled softly, her hand resting gently on his. "And you've helped me realize that life doesn't have to be about constant achievement. It's about finding balance and enjoying the moments that matter." As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat in silence, knowing that their journey was far from over. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger than ever. Michael's life had settled into a rhythm he was content with. He had found a new sense of balance, one that didn't revolve around corporate power or the constant chase for success. His freelance work was growing steadily, and he had begun to invest his time in projects that felt meaningful, helping small startups and offering guidance to young entrepreneurs. But as comfortable as he had become in his new life, there was still something lurking beneath the surface, something he couldn't quite ignore. Sophia had become his rock. She had been with him through everything: the legal battles, the personal struggles, the transformation. She had shown him what it meant to live authentically, to embrace the simplicity of life without being bogged down by the weight of the past. Yet Michael knew that there was more to her story that she hadn't shared, more that she had been holding back. He had noticed it in the way she would sometimes drift off during their conversations, her mind seemingly miles away. There were moments when she looked at him with a quiet sadness, as though there was something inside of her she hadn't yet reconciled. Michael didn't press her, not wanting to intrude, but the thought lingered: what was she carrying that she hadn't shared with him? One evening, they were sitting together at a cozy restaurant, their usual hangout for quiet dinners. The restaurant had soft lighting, a calming ambiance, and the hum of low conversations in the background. Michael had been telling her about a new project he was working on, but tonight, Sophia seemed distracted. Michael leaned in slightly, his voice gentle. "Sophia, you've been distant these past few days. Is everything okay?" Sophia froze for a second, and Michael could see the shift in her expression. She put down her fork, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her wineglass. "I'm fine," she said, but Michael could hear the lie in her voice. He didn't press her, but he wasn't about to let it go, not when he could see the weight in her eyes. After a moment, she sighed, setting the glass down and looking at him. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you, Michael. I've just been avoiding it because I didn't know how to bring it up." Michael felt his chest tighten, his curiosity piqued. "You know you can tell me anything." Sophia swallowed, her expression a mix of vulnerability and fear. "It's not easy for me to talk about this. I've always been independent, and I've kept certain parts of my life to myself. But lately, it's been eating at me. There's something from my past, something I've never fully dealt with." Michael's mind raced. Was this about her childhood, her family, He had never pushed her for details, but he had always suspected that there was more to Sophia's story. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Sophia, you don't have to tell me if you're not ready, but whatever it is, I'm here." She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. "I grew up in a broken home. My parents were both extremely controlling and critical. They expected perfection, and when I didn't meet their expectations, they pulled away from me. It created this fear inside of me, fear of not being enough. It shaped the way I saw myself and the way I built my career. I wanted to prove to everyone, including them, that I could succeed without their help." Sophia paused, her voice faltering slightly. "But now, I realize that I've been carrying that fear with me. I've been afraid to truly open up to anyone, afraid to let anyone in. And now, with you, I'm scared that I might not be able to give you the kind of love you deserve. I'm afraid that I'll push you away just like I did with everyone else." Michael's heart broke for her. He had always admired her strength, but hearing her talk about the pain she had carried for so long made him realize just how deeply it ran. He squeezed her hand gently, his voice steady. "Sophia, you don't have to be perfect. You're enough exactly as you are. You've been more than enough for me from the very beginning. I know it's not easy, but you don't have to face this alone anymore." Sophia looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "But what if I mess up? What if I'm not enough for you?" Michael reached out and cupped her face, wiping away the tear that had escaped. "You're already enough, Sophia. I'm here because I see you for who you are, and I love you, no matter what." For the first time, she allowed herself to fully lean into his embrace. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her chest. Michael had never judged her or expected her to be someone she wasn't. In his eyes, she was perfect just the way she was. And Sophia began to open up more. She sought therapy to work through the emotional baggage of her past and slowly learned to forgive herself for the things she had carried for so long. Michael supported her every step of the way, but he also gave her space when she needed it. Their relationship grew even deeper as they both became more vulnerable with each other. But just when it seemed like everything was falling into place, a new challenge emerged neither of them had seen coming. Michael received a phone call one evening that would change everything. It was from an old acquaintance, someone from his former life, a man he had once considered a close friend. "Michael," the voice on the other end said, "I need to talk to you. It's about the company." Michael felt a knot form in his stomach. He had hoped that his past would stay in the past, but he was wrong. "There's something you should know," the man continued. "There's a competitor who's been trying to take over your old company. They're offering a huge sum to buy the remaining assets. If you don't step in, they'll take everything." Michael's heart raced. He had thought the company was in the clear, but now it seemed like it was in danger once again. His mind immediately turned to Sophia. Could he go back to fix this, or had he learned enough to leave it all behind? As he sat with the phone in his hand, trying to process everything, he felt the weight of his decisions bearing down on him once again. Should he step in, even if it meant risking his newfound peace? Or should he trust that the company, without him, could find its own way? The next day, Michael told Sophia everything. She listened carefully, her expression calm but thoughtful. She had been through enough with him to know how much this weighed on his shoulders. "What do you want to do, Michael?" she asked quietly. He ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know. I'm scared that if I don't act, it'll all come crashing down. But if I do, I risk going back to a life I don't want." Sophia took his hand and looked into his eyes. "Whatever you decide, I'll be here with you. But don't forget that you've already built a life that makes you happy. You've found peace. Don't let anyone take that away from you, especially not for something that no longer defines who you are." Michael was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't need to rush into this decision. What mattered most was staying true to the life he had built with Sophia, the life that had brought him joy, purpose, and freedom. He finally spoke, his voice steady. "I'm going to let it go. I'll help them resolve the situation, but I won't go back to the company. I've learned enough." Sophia smiled, her eyes filled with admiration. "I'm proud of you, Michael." And in that moment, Michael realized that his true wealth was not in the assets or the company he had left behind. His true wealth was the life he had chosen, a life of peace, love, and authenticity. Michael and Sophia had made the decision that had shifted the course of their lives. They had decided to focus on their happiness and their future, free from the weight of the past. Michael had officially stepped away from the company once and for all. He had helped to resolve the situation without going back into the world of corporate power. He had found a way to support the company while maintaining his peace. It was a victory not just for him, but for the life he had built with Sophia. Their relationship had flourished in ways they hadn't anticipated. The emotional walls Sophia had built up over the years were slowly coming down, and Michael was no longer the man he had once been, the man chasing success at all costs. Together, they were discovering what it meant to truly live for themselves, not for anyone else's expectations. Yet, even as they settled into this new chapter of their lives, life had a way of throwing in a challenge when they least expected it. It started with a phone call, an unexpected one, coming from a new business venture that Michael had never anticipated. "Michael," the voice on the other end was familiar, but distant. "I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I need your help with something. There's a new startup I'm launching, and I need someone with your expertise to guide me. The company could really use your insight." Michael's mind raced. Another opportunity? After everything he had been through, he had sworn off going back into the business world. He had been content with his new life, focusing on his freelance work and enjoying his time with Sophia. But the voice on the phone kept pushing. "Think about it, Michael. It's a chance to get involved without the strings attached. You can work on your terms. I need your help, and I'm sure you can make a difference." Michael sat back in his chair, feeling the familiar pull of opportunity. But this time, it wasn't just about the company, it was about what was best for him, for the life he had built with Sophia. He hung up the phone with a heavy heart, unsure of what to do. The offer was tempting, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to risk everything he had worked for by stepping back into that world. Sophia noticed the change in Michael almost immediately. There was a weight in his eyes that hadn't been there when he came home that evening. She had grown used to the subtle shifts in his demeanor, but this time, it was different. "Michael," she said, gently reaching out to touch his arm. "What's going on?" He turned to her, running a hand through his hair. "I got an offer, a business opportunity. A startup needs me to consult and help them grow. I don't know what to do, Sophia. It's tempting. It's everything I've ever wanted." Sophia listened intently, but there was no panic in her eyes. She understood him in a way no one else did. She knew what this meant for him, the pull of the old world, the chance to prove himself, to build something again. But she also knew the cost. She had seen the toll his previous life had taken on him. "What do you really want, Michael?" she asked softly. "Is this something you need, or is it something you think you should do?" Michael hesitated, taking a deep breath. "I don't want to go back to that life, Sophia, but I also don't want to ignore the opportunity. It's hard to just let it go when I know I could make a real difference." Sophia smiled gently, her voice steady. "I know you, Michael. You've already made a difference. But what really matters now is what kind of difference you want to make in your own life. We can't keep going back to who we were. We have to keep moving forward." Her words hit him with the force of truth. He had already made the hard decision to walk away from the corporate world. He had found peace, but the temptation to go back was real. He had spent so many years chasing success. Could he now redefine what success meant? Sophia's steady hand on his shoulder grounded him. Whatever you decide, I'm here. But I think you know that your real success is living a life that brings you peace. Not just business deals, not just making an impact for others. It's about making an impact for yourself and the people you love. The words hung in the air, and Michael felt his heart soften. Sophia was right. His journey wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about the life they had built together. It was about finding happiness and fulfillment in the moments that truly mattered. The next morning, Michael called the startup back and politely declined the offer. It was a difficult decision, but the right one. He realized that he didn't need another business to define him. He had already created a life full of meaning and purpose. His time and energy were better spent building a future with Sophia, focusing on his own growth and helping others on his terms. Sophia was by his side when he made the call, her hand in his, as they both took in the moment. I made the right choice, Michael said, his voice filled with relief. It's not about chasing another deal. It's about living for the people who matter. Sophia kissed his cheek, her smile soft. I'm proud of you, Michael. You've come so far, and this is just the beginning. As the months passed, Michael and Sophia grew even closer. Michael continued his freelance work, dedicating his time to projects that fulfilled him. He also started working on a new passion project, creating a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own businesses but didn't know where to begin. He poured his heart into it, and as he did, he realized that helping others succeed brought him more joy than he had ever imagined. Sophia, too, continued to expand her career, taking on new writing projects and publishing her first book. She had found a sense of purpose in her work and had also begun to mentor aspiring writers, passing on her knowledge and encouraging others to find their voice. Together, they traveled to new places, explored new experiences, and built a life that was rich in love, peace, and purpose. They learned to balance their ambitions with their need for downtime, understanding that true success was not just about achievements, it was about the journey, the people you shared it with, and the choices you made along the way. They both knew that life would continue to present challenges. There would always be moments of uncertainty, moments of temptation to return to the past. But they also knew they had something worth fighting for. Love that had helped them both grow, evolve, and embrace the future. In the end, Michael and Sophia had created a life that was uniquely their own, none that was free from the chains of their pasts. One where they could be their true selves and find happiness in the everyday moments they shared. And as they sat together, watching the sunset from their balcony, they knew that this was just the beginning of a journey that would last a lifetime. The future was uncertain, but they were ready to face it together, stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever. 6 months later, life had settled into a quiet routine for Michael and Sophia. Their relationship was strong, and they had both embraced the journey they had chosen. Michael continued to mentor young entrepreneurs, and Sophia's writing career had taken off in ways she hadn't expected. Together, they had found a balanced one that allowed them to live authentically while pursuing their passions. But just as things seemed to be going perfectly, fate had one more twist in store. It began with an unexpected visit to Michael's apartment one rainy evening. The doorbell rang, and when Michael opened the door, he was stunned to find a familiar face standing on the other side. It was John, the business associate from his past. Michael, we need to talk, John said, his tone grave. Sophia, who had been sitting on the couch, glanced up in surprise. She didn't know who John was, but she could tell from the tension in Michael's face that this wasn't a casual visit. What is it, John? Michael asked, stepping aside to let him in, his voice cautious. John walked in, Looking around at the apartment, something about his demeanor seemed off. He glanced at Sophia, then back at Michael. "I'm sorry to show up like this, but there's something important you need to know," John said, his voice low and urgent. Michael felt a knot form in his stomach. "What's going on?" John hesitated for a moment, as though deciding whether to say what was on his mind. "You know that startup you turned down? The one I called you about? It wasn't just an opportunity. It's bigger than you think, Michael. The guy behind it, the one who's been offering you this chances, well, he's not who he says he is." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" John lowered his voice even further. "I've been doing some digging, and I found out that the man behind the startup is someone from your pasta former business rival. He's been trying to get close to you for a reason. He's not interested in the startup. He's interested in using your reputation to destroy everything you've built." Sophia stood up from the couch, her eyes narrowing. "What does this have to do with Michael?" John turned to her, his expression softening. "I didn't want to drag anyone else into this, but Michael's past is being used as leverage, and if he doesn't step in now, everything he's worked for could be destroyed." Michael felt a cold chill run down his spine. The weight of his old life was creeping back in, threatening everything he had built with Sophia. "What do you want me to do?" Michael asked, his voice tense. John's eyes met his. "I'm telling you because I don't want you to be blindsided. You have a choice, Michael. You can fight back, expose the truth, and take control of the situation. But it's going to cost you. It could drag you back into the world you've tried to leave behind." Michael stood motionless for a moment, taking in the gravity of the situation. His old life, the one he had worked so hard to escape, was suddenly knocking on his door again. He had thought he was free. He had thought he was living a life that was finally his own, away from the chaos of business, money, and the constant power struggles. But now, it felt like the world was pulling him back in. Sophia stepped closer to him, her voice steady and calm. "Michael, you don't have to do this. Whatever this man is trying to do, we'll figure it out together. But you don't have to lose yourself again. Not for a business. Not for anyone." Michael's eyes met hers, and for a moment, he felt like he could breathe again. She was right. He didn't have to go back to that world. He didn't have to lose everything he had worked for. But how could he let this man ruin everything? The next few days were a whirlwind. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he was being backed into a corner. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the man behind the startup wasn't just after his reputation, he was after something far deeper. He wanted to strip away everything Michael had built, to make him feel like he was nothing without the power and success he had once had. But as the days went by, Michael also realized that he had already won. He had found peace, love, and purpose. He had built a life with Sophia that mattered far more than any business deal or title. And yet, there was still one final battle to fight. He called John, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I'm not going to let him win, John," Michael said, his tone firm. "But I'm also not going back to that life. I'm going to expose him, but on my own terms. I'll use my knowledge, but I won't let it take over my life again." John didn't respond right away, but after a long silence, he finally said, "You've changed, Michael. I can see that now. You're not the same man I knew." Michael smiled softly, knowing that his decision had already been made. "No, I'm not. And that's why I'm going to do this the right way." The plan Michael devised was nothing short of brilliant. Using his network of contacts, he quietly gathered information on the rival businessman, uncovering the web of lies and manipulation that had been built around him. Instead of stepping back into the corporate world, he used his expertise to expose the man's true intentions. In a dramatic public reveal, Michael's findings were shared with the media, and the rival businessmen's fraudulent activities were brought to light. The man's plans to use Michael's reputation for personal gain were exposed, and his credibility was shattered. The twist, however, came when the man tried to retaliate. As it turned out, he had underestimated the strength of Michael's character. The exposure of his schemes didn't destroy Michael, it empowered him. The revelation proved that Michael's success wasn't tied to his wealth or status. It was tied to his integrity, his ability to stand up for what was right, and his commitment to the life he had built with Sophia. Weeks later, as the dust settled and life returned to normal, Michael and Sophia stood on their balcony once more, watching the sunset over the city. The twist that had threatened their peace had only made their bond stronger. Michael had faced his past head-on, and in doing so, he had shown not only the world but also himself that he was in control of his own destiny. Sophia leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You did it, Michael. You faced your fears and came out stronger, together." Michael smiled, his heart full. "We did it. You were right, Sophia. I didn't have to go back to the man I was. I could face it, but I didn't have to let it define me." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with love. "You've already defined yourself, Michael, and I'm proud of you. We both are." They stood in silence, letting the beauty of the moment wash over them. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it together, stronger than ever, with a love that had been tested and had come out even more resilient. In the weeks that followed the public exposure of the rival businessman's schemes, Michael and Sophia's lives began to settle back into a sense of normalcy. The storm had passed, and with it, the remnants of Michael's past had been fully cleared away. No longer haunted by the weight of his previous life, he could finally embrace the future with confidence and clarity. Michael's role in the business world had been reshaped. He continued to offer his expertise, but only to those who truly aligned with his values. His focus now lay on helping others build businesses with integrity, without the corporate power struggles he had once been a part of. He found peace in this new purpose, working at his own pace, enjoying the freedom that came with his choices. Sophia, too, had found a deeper sense of fulfillment. Her writing continued to thrive, but it was her work with young writers that brought her the most joy. She no longer felt the need to prove herself to anyone. Instead, she poured her energy into nurturing others, helping them find their voice in a world that often stifled creativity. Together, Michael and Sophia had created a life that was rich in meaning. They had faced their fears, navigated the challenges of their past, and come out stronger on the other side. Their love had grown deeper, rooted in trust, respect, and an understanding that they didn't need to chase anything. They already had everything they needed. One sunny afternoon, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city, Michael turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with affection. "I never could have imagined this life, Sophia. This peace, this contentment," he said softly, taking her hand in his. Sophia smiled, her heart full. "I know what you mean. We've come so far, haven't we?" Michael nodded, his gaze shifting to the horizon. "I've learned that the real journey isn't about climbing mountains or proving ourselves to the world. It's about finding the people who truly matter, embracing the moments that bring us joy, and living in a way that reflects who we really are." Sophia squeezed his hand, her voice steady. "And we've done just that together." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city. It felt like the world was finally in alignment, as though everything had fallen into place at the exact right moment. Michael and Sophia had created a life that was not just a result of luck or chance, but a life built on the foundation of their love, their growth, and their commitment to one another. As the night embraced them, they sat in comfortable silence, knowing that no matter what challenges life would throw their way, They had already faced the hardest ones. They had overcome their pasts, found peace in the present, and were now ready to face the future together, hand in hand. Their journey had just begun. But whatever came next, they knew one thing for certain: they were ready for it. Because together, they had everything they needed.